Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about the Bungie, Destiny, and Marathon situation. I wanted to kind of talk about this because I think it's a great example on what not to do and why it's so important to have good communication and a relationship with your customer. By alienating the Destiny 2 player base, they've more or less shot themselves in the foot when it comes to Marathon, and part of that is because the two communities overlap so much. And something to have in the back of your mind for the rest of this video is if the community overlap is so similar with being both PvP and PvE players, should Marathon have been its own game? Or maybe, just maybe, should it have just been a game mode in Destiny 2? So let's talk about it. Marathon is not doing so hot, but it was always destined to be that way. And to really clarify things, not doing so hot isn't necessarily that it didn't sell. It did sell, it just didn't make as much money as it realistically needed to make based on the $200 to potentially $300 million that was spent on the game. Paul Tassi talked about this in his article, and then he even mentioned that realistically with the current sales, it's only looking at making about $50 to $55 million in profit. That's just not enough to be considered any kind of success. In the making of this video, I've been trying to kind of explain to my audience, you guys, how Bungie actually cannibalized their own player base, but Alenia Analytics actually came out and fully gave us information showing exactly that. So the graph in front of you shows that 78% of Marathon's Steam player base, keep in mind the Steam player base for Marathon is 70% of the overall player base. It has the majority of their players on Steam. So 78% of those players came from Destiny 2, whereas only like 50% of them, 55% of them came from games like Arc Raiders. The point of that being is that while Arc Raiders was, its quote-unquote rival because it was in the extraction genre, more players actually came from the Destiny community instead. So why is that a bad thing? Why is it bad that the Marathon player base and the Destiny player base are one and the same? There's a couple of reasons behind that, but one, Bungie kind of burned that bridge with many of their Destiny player base being extremely upset. That's why you see so much volatility online about how people want Marathon to fail or that people are rooting for Bungie to fail, etc. It's because at this point, most Destiny fans feel abandoned or hurt by Bungie in some way. And that kind of goes back quite a few years. And that's not even really getting into the lack of communication that everyone is feeling, especially when we were promised a roadmap roughly 6 months ago, with DMG actually indicating that we're not going to really hear from them until closer to June at this point. So another few months. And that also included the 3-month delay of the last content patch that the game was supposed to receive a couple of days before Marathon launched. So it's pretty obvious that at this point it's kind of all hands on deck still for Marathon, with no communication being given to the Destiny player base, only exacerbating this issue. And I can't stress this enough, the Destiny community has been waiting on what was supposed to be a multi-year roadmap. The reason why that's such an important moment for the Destiny community is because at this point in time, the future for Destiny 2 feels very, very uncertain. The future of the Destiny franchise feels uncertain. And why would you invest time playing a live service game that doesn't have a future? Why would you grind gear in a live service game if the game doesn't have anything to look forward to? If there's no raid coming, if there's no dungeon coming, etc. There's no motivation for players to do anything. Now, I can already see someone in the comments saying, well, what does it matter if they feel hurt? Why do they feel hurt? It's just a company making money. And that's not really the way that it works. In reality, a live service game is much like a software as a service job. You actually are supposed to cater to your customers so that way they're more inclined to purchase your product, to continue to purchase your product, and maybe even additional products that you make in the future. And other products doesn't even have to be Marathon. It could be the new Magic the Gathering collab, for example, that they just dropped in the game, even though it's at an all-time low and they're 6 months behind on a roadmap and no communication. Your goal is actually to make them happy, much like with pretty much any sales job. You don't want the people buying your product to feel like your product is bad, and you don't want them to feel like you don't care about them. Doing that only only ensures that you're going to make less money. If you're a Destiny PvP player, you probably know that in the last 5 or 6 years, Bungie has abandoned PvP in Destiny 2 just flat out. There's been no real changes. There's only been a few new maps, and most of them weren't very well received. But about 5 or 6 years ago, like I said, it started to become really obvious that the amount of time the Destiny 2 team was putting into the PvP side of things seemed a lot less, and the community noticed. Coincidentally, who do you think is most likely to have played Marathon if they came from the Destiny community? Probably the PvP players. And in the PvP community, it was kind of understood, at least, you know, sort of in a joking way, that most of the PvP developers probably got moved over to Marathon. But I think the more you look at Marathon, the more that you really see that's probably the case, actually. A lot of the things that are going on in Marathon, from balance to gun design to feel of character abilities and movement, they look shockingly similar to Destiny 2. I think the more time you've spent in Destiny 2, the more you'll look at Marathon and think, huh, that kind of looks a little familiar. As luck would have it, I was actually listening to Aztecross as I was editing this video, and he had something pretty interesting to say on the topic.
I think Destiny guns in Marathon would be sick. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of these guns, they're very Destiny-like. I'm just saying. I would say over half the perks, if not 75% of all perks present in Marathon, are perks inside of Destiny. And even outright weapons. I mean, dude, this is Huckleberry. That's just Huckleberry. There is just so much one-to-one.
And when there is so much one-to-one that's literally just carried over to Marathon, it's weird to think that they're targeting the same audience with the same content, just in a different game mode and different art style. I think it kind of opens things up to a bigger conversation that we'll dive into in a moment. Should Marathon have just been a game mode in Destiny 2? The point being is that Bungie has really burned the bridge with many of their players, and so a lot of players, even if Marathon was intended to be for their audience, they're not going to pick it up. I am a great example of this. I know for a fact that I would love Marathon. It actually is very exciting for me, and I love watching people play it even on streams. So I've been doing that instead, but I don't want to spend money or get invested in my own playtime in Marathon because I don't want to support another Bungie product, because frankly I feel very let down by the current state of Destiny 2, especially being that I really loved the PvP in Destiny 2. And the fact of the matter is, if you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food that they're serving, you probably don't go back. The same thing with video games. If you're not happy with the product, you're probably not gonna give it a second chance. Players often remember how they felt about a game when they last played it, and when they last played it, if they were enjoying themselves, they're definitely going to be more likely to come back. However, if they look back on a game with negative emotions, a feeling conflicted from friction, etc., there's lots of reasons why players might feel badly about a game or an experience that they had in a game. But you don't want that for a live service game, because those players are going to be less likely to come back by a lot. All of this ends up being a massive problem if the franchise is ever going to continue. A lot of people are calling for Destiny 2 to just die and then have the developers, Bungie, work on Destiny 3 instead. But I think it's really important that we understand that with all of this happening and all of this awful feeling that's been thrown around the Destiny community, the lack of communication, the feeling of abandonment, etc., part of the reason why they're not buying into Marathon in bigger waves and why there's so much volatility is because players are still angry about the way that they were treated and the way Destiny 2 was treated. So if you ditch Destiny 2 and make a Destiny 3, sure, you're going to get some of that audience, but I think a large portion of the audience is not going to be invested in a Destiny 3. For the franchise to succeed, Bungie needs to win back the trust and goodwill of their player base. In order to do that, they can't just ditch Destiny 2 the way that it currently is right now. They need to fix it up, they need to reinvest in it, and sometime later then they can say, okay, we're gonna go dark for a few years while we develop Destiny 3. and hype will continue to build over that time. People will be excited about it. But I can tell you right now, there will be many players that will say, well, why would I play Destiny 3 when Destiny 2 ended up in the sorry state that it was in? And not to mention that while they worked on Marathon, which was funded probably very heavily by the Destiny community, they continued to force more microtransactions and giving less quality content and less content overall just in general. And again, we see that right now. There's such little communication and talk about the future of the game, and yet they do a collaboration for cosmetics, for microtransactions with Magic the Gathering. If you guys are enjoying the video, leave a like down below, comment down below with any questions or other topics you guys want to talk about. Always happy to talk to you guys about stuff down there. And then subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this, and back to the video. I think the craziest part about this entire experience is that genuinely Marathon could have been a game mode in Destiny 2. I don't know how many of you were around back then or played the Division originally, but the Division had something called the Darkness Zone. The way the Darkness Zone worked, anything that you found in the Darkness Zone, if you died with it or if somebody took it from your extraction before it got out, then you would lose that item and they could obtain it. So what it meant was essentially there was still this idea of an extraction shooter, but what you came in with originally was still safe. The point being is that could have been something that really worked for Destiny 2 instead. And they sort of tried this. They sort of tried the idea of an extraction game mode in Destiny 2 with the new Lawless Frontiers activity. And honestly, it's a pretty good activity, but the more I played it, the more I thought this just could have been Marathon. Marathon could have just been this activity, and although it would have been a little more hardcore PvP, it would have actually catered to some of the Bungie community that they've long since left behind and forgotten about. I think this is really important to talk about because one of the things that really draws people to MMOs is that they have that kind of theme park feel. Usually in an MMO like World of Warcraft or something, you always have something for everyone, and that's again part of the appeal, is everyone casual to hardcore, no matter if they're PvE or PvP players, will have something that they can do, something that they can work on and progress. This was really, I think, Destiny's moment to give players a different type of game mode. Really, it could have been like Gambit 3.0 if we're being honest about it. So while this would have been an opportunity to maybe regain back some of that player goodwill and player trust from their PvP community, instead what Bungie did is they doubled down on Marathon and instead neglected even their PvE player base, effectively pissing off and disappointing pretty much the entire Destiny 2 player base. So while some of them did clearly go to Marathon and are checking out Marathon via that graph that we saw earlier, if you've looked at the past heights and past size of the Destiny community, clearly not many of them did. And perhaps maybe what's more insane is that while Destiny 2 is in the worst position it's ever been, in the last 60 days it still had a high of over 80,000 players playing PvP. That's still a ridiculous amount of players if you consider the fact that concurrents are at an all-time low, the content is considered to be at an all-time low, with the least amount of things to do in the game than ever before. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys feel like Marathon should have been its own thing, or do you feel like it should have been a part of Destiny 2? I think it's pretty obvious that at this point I really do feel like it should have been a game mode in Destiny 2. Frankly, I also feel like it would have just had more success in Destiny 2 if a lot more of the PvP player base from Destiny 2 hadn't been written off and instead carried over into this new activity inside of the game. I think that there would have been a lot more people playing the content than what we're currently seeing for Marathon overall, especially because it would have been, like I said earlier, a chance for them to bring back and reinvest in their PvP players and show them their goodwill. One thing I do want to say too is that it's actually been really nice to see the team over at Marathon just being very responsive and very open about stuff. Seeing Joe Ziegler constantly talking about stuff has been a breath of fresh air. However, admittedly, having come from the Destiny player base, it also does sting a little bit because it feels like that should have been the case for Destiny all along as well. It's nice to see Marathon doing that, but like I said, it does kind of sting a little bit that Destiny never got that. And I think at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people are kind of hand waving that and saying, well, it's the tech debt. They can move a lot faster in fixing and making changes in Marathon. And while I'm sure that that is the case, it doesn't mean much to me, because putting some words in a tweet or putting some words on a blog post doesn't mean that you have a fix for whatever it is in the game. It doesn't mean that you're going to change whatever pain point they're experiencing. Putting those words on those platforms for people to see just means that you care a little bit. And acknowledging that pain point is a step in the right direction. I think so many companies right now are so worried about acknowledging problems, admitting faults, and then potentially not having timelines for people. But at the end of the day, in a software as a service or a games as a service environment, you need to have that communication with your player base so they understand that you're understanding their problems, that you're going to fix their issues, and that you're going to come up with a solid solution. That increases their faith in your brand and also how they feel about spending money on your products. Because if they know that they spend money on your product, and even if it's not in the best condition at the start, they're going to be willing to stick with you in the long run. And so many games nowadays don't ever launch perfectly. And to be honest, in a day and age where we're waiting 6+ months for a roadmap that we don't even know if we're going to get at this point, it just feels like a different magnitude of communication and abandonment just in general for the Destiny player base. So I hope that we can move forward and that can be a better, more constant thing for Bungie as a whole and not just a Marathon team thing. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see. We don't really know if Destiny has a future. I hope it does, but again, we'll have to wait and see. So let me know if you guys have any other comments or any other thoughts down below. Like the video if you guys liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more stuff like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.